Texas senators vote to ban services that let people buy lottery tickets on an app, but the debate raises larger questions.
A criminal organization actually operating within our state government.
We look at the abrupt policy change at the lottery and why supporters of online ticket sales are now looking to the Texas House. Republicans in the Texas legislature questioning the value of solar and wind energy powering our grid.
We're number one in wind, number one in solar. I'm not sure that's something to brag about.
Our special report looks at the energy crossroads as Washington politics spills into our state's future. A new statewide bill could mean more medical examiners sooner in Texas. How our investigation into a young girl's mysterious death plays into that legislation, and the update to that 60-year-old case following our report.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. On Thursday, the Texas Senate voted unanimously to shut down lottery couriers. Those are businesses that sell Texas lottery tickets online or through an app. The vote comes after heated hearings where senators accused couriers of enabling money laundering. They cited concerns about a $95 million jackpot where an entity bought almost every number combination. The bill now heads to the House. But the big headlines in this story came days before the vote. Accusations on the Senate floor raising questions about potential criminal acts tied to the lottery. Adam Schwager digs into the debate.
A week and a half after saying,
"We don't have the authority over the courier entity,"
the Texas Lottery Commission did a 180, announcing they're banning couriers. Hours later, Governor Greg Abbott broke his silence, directing the Texas Rangers to investigate two large jackpots where couriers were involved.
Instead of a ban, we just ask that you regulate us to ensure appropriate consumer protections.
Monday afternoon, the coalition of Texas lottery couriers, consisting of 3 lottery mobile apps regulated and licensed in other states, pled their case to a hostile Senate State Affairs Committee.
You can show me how you can force somebody to be reliable, that you can write into law integrity and ethics. I am all ears.
Whatever compelling case they had was likely undercut by Lottery.com Chief Operating Officer Greg Potts. While admitting his company played a role in a controversial $95 million Lotto Texas jackpot, where a foreign entity spent about $25 million to secure nearly all the possible number combinations, he accused the Texas Lottery Commission of giving them the go-ahead.
We were very surprised that the answer was yes. We fully expected that they would laugh at us and say, well, no, of course you can't do this.
Potts also alleged the Lottery Commission knew they were working out of a non-retail location only housing lottery terminals, a clear violation of Texas law. In the end, fingers were pointed at one man.
To your knowledge, who was the person at the Lottery Commission that approved it?
I believe the ask was made to the executive director.
Who was by name?
Gary Grief.
Monday's testimony prompted Attorney General Ken Paxton to also join in on the investigation, an investigation senators are patiently waiting on.
These couriers were actually being used to launder money. Were they not?
Because if the source of the scandal is where they suspect it's from,
A criminal organization actually operating within our state government.
senators think banning couriers might not be harsh enough.
I strongly believe that the only legislative change that would have a meaningful impact and eliminate the organized crime syndicate embedded in the Texas government is legislation that completely and permanently abolishes the Lottery Commission.
For State of Texas, I'm Adam Schwager.
After the Senate vote, lottery couriers are looking to the Texas House for support. They're backing a bill filed by Cedar Park Democrat John Busey. He says banning couriers is government overreach, and he's pushing for regulation instead. Busey's bill would create a courier license with strict standards.
Let's have standards, let's have them register with the lottery service, and let's make sure that they're all playing by the same rules and that there's some oversight. But throwing it out just makes no rational sense to the philosophy of Texas.
Busey cited personal liberty as well as the lottery's contribution to public education as reasons to regulate rather than ban couriers. The Texas Senate unanimously voted to raise pay for teachers statewide. The bill, which still needs to pass the House, would improve teacher pay to an all-time high. According to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the average teacher with 5 or more years experience would make $69,000 a year compared to $54,000 in 2019.
This allotment would be for teacher salaries, delivering historic pay raises that recognize both commitment and longevity in the classroom.
The bill includes funding to close a pay gap for teachers in rural and smaller districts. In addition, the bill increases the teacher incentive allotment program, giving raises for outstanding teachers. Texas is at an energy crossroads as Washington politics could slow down renewable growth. At a time some experts say those sources are needed more than ever to keep our grid powered. Our investigation is coming up. First, our research leads to a change in a 60-year-old case, the mysterious strangulation death of a young girl in Marble Falls. Why lawmakers will soon consider new legislation following our reporting that could mean more medical examiners across Texas. An update now to our investigative project, A Hanging on Backbone Creek. Nearly 60 years after a young girl mysteriously died in Marble Falls, there's new movement in her case. In 1965, Danon Lewis was found hanging by a jump rope in a shed behind her family's home, and a local elected justice of the peace who had no medical background and didn't order an autopsy ruled it an accident. Many who knew this 13-year-old never believed she was responsible for her own death, instead suspecting someone else could have killed her. Based on the evidence we uncovered, a new JP submitted an update to the Texas Department of State Health Services to amend Danon's death certificate. The document now officially says the manner of death could not be determined and clarifies Danon was found on her knees with a rope tied around her neck. An amendment her loved ones say honors her dignity. Why was it so important for you to see Danon's death certificate updated?
There was just no way that it was an accident, and it just led me and many others to, always question it. When I was contacted by you, it just kind of got things more in focus again. It just kind of resolves things a little bit, just knowing that she didn't do it to herself intentionally or otherwise.
What does it mean after almost 60 years that we were able to get this done?
I think for me personally, it takes away the shroud of any thought of suicide. It removes it totally. You have helped clear some confusion from 60 years. The fog is thinner now. From my part of the family, we appreciate your efforts and what you have uncovered and what you have done. That's awesome. Thank you.
Danon's case helped us expose an antiquated 200-year-old system throughout Texas, where most counties still use JPs to investigate deaths with little training and scant forensic knowledge. That system led us to state lawmakers who, after our reporting, will soon consider new legislation just filed that could mean less reliance on JPs in Texas. They already have several other court-related duties. Instead, there would be more opportunities to utilize medical examiners, doctors schooled specifically in conducting autopsies. SB 1370, the bill just filed by Republican Senator Tan Parker, would lower the population from 2.5 million to just 1 million people as the proposed threshold requiring counties to establish a medical examiner's office. Today, there are just 7 counties in the state with a population of 1 million or more, and they already have medical examiners serving them. The Texas Demographic Center predicts 5 more counties will surpass 1 million people by 2060. That includes booming Williamson County, where after our reporting about overworked JPs doing death investigations there, officials recently purchased property for a future medical examiner office. Fort Bend and Montgomery counties will also likely hit the 1 million mark by 2060, but in In recent years, officials there chose to establish their own ME offices, just like several other counties currently below the population threshold, even though they weren't required. Some even formed a medical examiner district made up of 4 counties in North Texas. That's something Parker's bill also aims to expand and put into statute, the possibility of neighboring counties, no matter their population, sharing an ME office. It's an official way to allow such agreements to jointly operate and maintain the service, which could help counties nearing 1 million people save money and share expertise.
And just make it easier for counties to have partnerships that are collaborative with neighboring counties or other entities to provide those services to the people they're blessed to represent. So it's always a balance between protecting the needs of the taxpayer while at the same time doing the right thing by our people.
And it appears this bill could have bipartisan support, as Parker's Democratic colleague, Senator Sarah Eckhart, tells us. Eckhart, a former county judge in Travis County, which has a long-established ME office, said relying on JPs for death investigations throughout most of the state, a system unlike any other in the country, is outdated.
Our JPs are really struggling, and we've seen way too many errors relying on individuals who, God love them, they're not equipped to make these calls. This is leading to unjust results in the criminal justice context.
Eckhart said she's open to discussing Parker's bill with him, but also acknowledges staffing more medical examiner offices could be challenging. Experts tell us there are fewer than 1,000 doctors with this specialty actively practicing in the U.S. No doubt that will come up if this bill progresses this session, adding another layer to the debate over death, something that will eventually impact every Texan. We'll keep you updated. Until then, check out our complete coverage, docuseries, and podcast online at the station's website.
We're #1 in wind, #1 in solar. I'm not sure that's something to brag about.
Republicans in the Texas legislature weighing in on solar and wind energy, renewable sources part of the equation powering our grid. Our special report looks at the energy crossroads as Washington politics spills into our state's future.
We're not going to do the wind thing. Wind. Big ugly windmills, they ruin your neighborhood, they ruin you. If you have a house that's near a windmill, guess what? Your house is worth less than half.
As the political winds in Washington shift, cities like Austin are bracing for impact. Collaborating with our media partners at The Hill in a project supported by the Pulitzer Center, investigator Matt Grant has been examining this renewed pushback and what it could mean for renewable regulation in Texas.
Well, Josh, the country really is at a crossroads when it comes to energy policy. And with Texas relying heavily on wind and solar, there's now new concern from some about the way forward.
In a state where everything's bigger.
Solar is magic, right?
Texas has long touted its #1 status as a renewable energy leader.
We're by a substantial margin the largest wind energy producing state in the country.
So these solar panels, if the sun is shining, even on a day like today, they're generating electricity.
Texas takes an all-the-above approach to energy policy, not shared by the White House these days.
We will drill, baby, drill.
On his first day back in office for a second term, President Trump signed an executive order pausing new wind projects on federal land and water over concerns it degrades natural landscapes and fails to serve energy consumers. This comes as Texas, the only state in the continental U.S. with its own power grid, ERCOT, not reliant on the rest of the country, is increasingly using renewables. According to ERCOT data, on a mid-February afternoon, wind and solar accounted for half of all of Texas's energy supply. In Austin, it's around the same, at 49%, harnessed by nearly 20 locations from the Panhandle to West Texas to the Gulf Coast. We headed south to see for ourselves. At over 15,000, Texas has more wind turbines than any other state. This one behind me near Corpus Christi on your way to the coast helps power Austin 3 hours away. An hour north in conservative B County, we met Roy Velasquez.
So you really can see them pretty clearly.
Yes, sir. There are a bunch of them.
His backyard overlooks a sprawling wind farm, but it's not the view that bothers him.
And what do you think staring out at them? Does it bother you?
They don't bother me, but they're not helping me on anything.
So if there's a benefit, you just personally haven't seen it?
Yes, sir.
Now, how many homes can a project like this power?
This one is about 140,000 homes.
Across the way, Jeff Clark says overall, customers are benefiting from wind turbines like these through lower electric bills. This solar and wind farm feeds power into the Texas grid.
Texas is blessed with oil, gas, sun, wind, really all of the above, as we say. And we believe in building all of them. Frankly, that's the most conservative thing you can do, is produce your own energy.
Clark is president of the Advanced Power Alliance, a trade association based in Austin that promotes development and investment in renewable energy.
Not everyone has oil and gas under their feet, but everyone has wind and sun over their heads.
Like most solar and wind farms in Texas, the private land where this one's located is leased and unaffected by the president's executive order.
I'm concerned about the immediate future.
Still, in this political climate, Clark worries about the potential for a scale back of renewables and what that would mean for Texas and America's ability to remain competitive globally.
President Trump has talked about dead birds, about property values going down. How is your industry going to handle that moving forward?
I would extend an invitation to anybody in the administration to come out and visit this project with us if they would like. I think a lot of the rhetoric attacking clean energy is because it works so well. People see it as a threat. They see it as competition.
Americans need abundant, affordable energy.
Clark is no stranger to the state capitol and plans to testify again this session. We found more than a dozen bills that could affect renewable energy regulation, taxation, and expansion.
We have to take a look at renewables.
Among them, Senate Bill 819, filed by Republican Senator Lois Kolkhorst and already referred to the Chamber's Business and Commerce Committee. If passed, her measure would increase regulation and permitting rules for wind and solar.
Texas leads the country in renewable energy. Why add red tape to make it harder for wind and solar industries to operate?
Okay, so tap the brakes there. We're number one in solar and we're number one in wind. And we know that this is not a reliable resource. And it's also causing a strain on some of our resources. You cannot put solar panels over thousands of acres and not think that there is not a natural resource issue out there. It's not red tape. It is a protection for landowners. It is the right thing to do for Texas.
Along with a permit from the Public Utilities Commission, Kolkhorst wants to require future projects to have public input and environmental and wildlife impact reviews.
I support President Trump in saying, let's put a pause on this, let's make sure that we know where it's going. And I certainly don't want to, as a coastal lawmaker, see them out in our bays and estuaries of these big windmills.
Her bill could require those windmills be at least 3,000 feet from any property line, compared to less than 500 for oil well drilling. State lawmakers have focused a lot of attention on energy in recent years. In 2021, freezing temps caused rolling blackouts, with more than 4.5 million homes losing power. Some experts worry a renewable scale back could further strain Texas's grid, which already faces record demand.
That's effectively almost doubling the peak demand of the ERCOT grid in about 6 years. So it's a really significant impact.
How best to address it will be a fight continuing to fuel debate.
We're number one in wind, number one in solar. I'm not sure that's something to brag about.
Here in Austin, Austin Energy is the city's electric provider, which you mentioned gets half of its supply from wind and solar. What does it have to say?
That it has a long history of leading Texas in renewable energy investments, telling us in a statement, with the projected growth in local and statewide energy demand over the next decade, renewables will continue to be essential in meeting the energy needs of our community and maintaining a reliable energy grid.
And that's an important point, not just for Austin, but as you said, the entire state.
Right. The director of the Energy Institute at UT Austin says solar and wind are reliable and necessary to keep the Texas grid running.
Is wind energy needed to keep the grid stable?
Yeah, absolutely. Over 25% of the power capacity is wind right now. You can't just take away a fourth of the grid.
And Josh, of course, will continue to track Senator Kolkhorst's bill along with any other White House actions that could impact Texas.
You can also check out our interactive map that shows a breakdown of how Austin gets its energy, including the amount from wind and solar. It's online in this week's State of Texas story on the station's website. Families of children killed in school shootings come to the Capitol calling for action. How one lawmaker is sending a warning not to ignore their message. A coalition of gun violence prevention groups rallied outside the Capitol Thursday, among them families of the children killed in the Uvalde school shooting. They're calling for new gun safety legislation, including a law to raise the minimum age to 21 to buy semi-automatic rifles like the one used in the Uvalde shooting. The families called for similar legislation in the last session. Lawmakers rejected it, and opposition remains high this session to laws that would restrict gun rights. Still, families of the victims say they'll keep pushing for change at the Capitol.
We will continue to be up here going and talking to every one of these people. I don't care how many times we get told no, we will continue to come back.
State Senator Roland Gutierrez represents a district that includes Uvalde. He filed several bills, but acknowledged that any gun legislation faces a difficult path. Gutierrez said it's still important to talk about the issue.
This story, sadly, will happen again in some other school, in some other mall, in some other place in our state. And I hate to say that. I hate to predict that. But while these people do nothing and continue to do nothing, it will happen again.
Texas lawmakers did take action last session to improve school safety. That included requirements to have active shooter plans, mental health training, and armed guards at public schools. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.